Hey, everybody, welcome back. Craig Schaub here with George Thomas, our film critic from the Akron Beacon Journal. George is here, and we're getting to talk about movies that are in theaters yet again. It seems like we're having, all but one of the three movies we will discuss tonight are going to be in theaters. George, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk movies. I know next week is a big week in the movie industry with one battle after another coming out, but we do have some movies predating it, and we will talk first about the new body horror movie Him. Now, this is not directed by Jordan Peele, one of the great directors working right now. He is a producer, though, on this film, and I got to tell you, George, there's a lot of intrigue. Stylistically, it looks pretty interesting. It's body horror, which seems to be a very popular mode of horror these days. And it's also football as well, one of my favorite things. So does it all meld together pretty well, or what were your final thoughts on this movie?
You see, I don't get the body horror angle, but you know what? My lead was football is horror. In this day and age, it makes sense. So it's getting savaged on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's like, I didn't give a lot of bad reviews this summer, and maybe I don't want to stereotype. Okay, I after I posted my review on Rotten Tomatoes, I perused a couple of the ones that rated the movie rotten, and the reviews basically came down to I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Well. It probably made sense to me because I'm a sports writer too. So
certainly helps.
But this is football is horror. Cameron Cade is a stud quarterback coming out of college, projected to be a number one overall pick in the draft. Notice I didn't say NFL draft because I have to imagine the NFL, the NCAA, and everybody wanted nothing to do with what this movie had to say.
Yes.
Problem is, he's attacked, and he suffers a blunt trauma to his head. Excuse me, that could potentially end his career. Now he makes a deal with the people, the ownership team of the team that was going to draft him. The deal is he has to go to work out with the quarterback he's going to eventually replace Isaiah White, portrayed wonderfully by Marlon Wayans, for a week. And it's essentially a boot camp. Now I can see where the body horror comes in on this because it's 7 days. And Isaiah White basically beats him up. The purpose of this boot camp is to instill the values of a winner for this franchise.
Right.
See, having it's a horror film, so obviously not everything is what it seems. So, work from that premise. And, in that regard, I'll give you an example of something. One day of the training is leadership, and the leadership is a brutal kind of thing. And Isaiah White is always in this kid's face. This entire time, he's stuck. Winning is everything, blah, 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 blah. Now, I get it, because I've been around that mentality for years. I get the way the script, which director Justin Tipping co-wrote, is structured. It's structured 5 days attuned to a value related to pro football and pro sports in general over the course of that 7 days. And with the exception of the first day, something horrible happens. But the movie's got a lot more to say because it delves into themes that have been problematic in pro sports in general, such as fandom. The way the film portrays fandom is chilling. And if you pay attention to sports fan, in some respect, it's on point.
Right.
It's satirical. It's meant to be funny. On a more serious note, you've heard athletes in the past talk about the slave master mentality of some owners. That's addressed here. I mean, and maybe someone who isn't as in tune to the sports world wouldn't get it, wouldn't appreciate it. Thus, some of those reviews, because having reviewed films for 30 some odd years now, and just to give you some perspective, whenever I went to a junket in LA or something during the football season, it was hard to find another movie critic to talk football.
Right.
It's just not a world they're hip to. I gave the movie a solid B because I liked it. I got the message. I understood what Justin Tipping was trying to say. Marlon Wayans is this is some of the best work he's done probably since Requiem for a Dream. I mean, he sells the part.
Yeah,
he really does. Tariq, and I can't remember the kid's last name. Withers, Tariq Withers. For a new face on the scene, very convincing. But, you're a horror fan. Don't let all of what I said carry you away. No pun intended. But you get the climax you expect in a horror movie. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay.
You get it with a meaningful message. And the overall message has to do with selling out, basically. So there we go.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, you've mentioned it many of times. You're not the biggest horror genre fan, but I think that, when horror movies have something to say on a little bit of a deeper level, I think that's when I gravitate to them. And I think that this is, kind of one of those movies, the way you're describing it. Obviously the big name behind all of this is Jordan Peele. This is not his film. He's a producer on the film.
But it's very Peele-like. It really
that's
is.
What I was going to ask. Does it feel, because Peele has made some
out there horror movies with something to say. Yeah.
Right. Some very uncomfortably great movies.
Which is why he probably decided to produce this script.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very Peele-like. Now I wouldn't say the visual style is his, because the visual style can be very arresting.
Okay. Which
is probably unnecessary given that you're dealing with the frenetic pace of sports.
Right.
So, and it's a scant 96 minutes. It kept me riveted, and the payoff was there. So,
yeah. Well, you mentioned something interesting, and I think there's probably more to it than just this, but football has been a subject matter that doesn't get a lot of attention in the film industry. Primarily, I think the logistics of having people that look the part, just putting together a football game on screen is probably not the easiest thing to do as well. But in the world of sports movies, football movies don't tend to get a lot of consistency in terms of release. Do you feel like it's maybe because the critical audience is not going to appreciate it as much as maybe someone like you, who is a sports fan and also a movie critic as well?
You know what? I can get where even a sports fan would criticize some football movies for the lack of reality and on-game play. The beauty of this movie, though, there isn't a lot of on-field play.
Right.
It's truly a horror drama more than anything else. So there isn't a lot of football at it.
Okay.
So that's not a concern here.
Okay. Well, we are, sort of post Toronto International Film Festival. The circuits are still kind of ramping up, though. I would normally call this the mid-September Oscar bait movie that didn't quite maybe reach the expectations that many thought. Talking about A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, Colin Farrell, Margot Robbie. This is another movie that's kind of been slammed a little bit on the critics' sites as well. And obviously, when you have heavyweights like Robbie and Farrell, you kind of expect a little bit higher quality. So that's why you get some of that Oscar bait type situation. I think last year's mid-September Oscar baity movie that didn't reach those levels was We Live in Time with Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield. That was another movie that kind of fell short of expectations. This one probably the same, but what are your thoughts on A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey?
The first thing, you know what? I'm trying to think. I mentioned in my review, it's high concept. Think Vanilla Sky, think The Truman Show.
Okay.
It's making the director, I'm trying to
Kogonada? Is it Kogonada? I've never pronounced it.
Okay. He's Japanese.
Right.
And it's a script from Seth Rice. And they're trying to make you think. They're trying to make you ponder the meaning of life. And you know what? In that regard, it's very high concept. You have to buy into the premise to enjoy it. And I bought into the premise. It's been a weird summer because I liked most of what I saw. And then I get to the fall, and everything I've liked so far, the other critics have not liked. So I got that going for me. But
well, that's a good thing though, because you're staying true to your taste, and when you come out of a movie, it's how you feel about it, not how the populace feel about it. So it's good that you buck the trend a little bit there.
They're palate cleansers for me with respect to award season coming up. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, in both the films we've discussed so far, you've got directors trying to do something different.
Yeah.
Kogonada is trying to do something different. I won't call it a fairy tale, but you have to buy into the notion that there's this GPS directing these two strangers on separate journeys through their lives that eventually converge together in some respect, and possesses plenty of charm. It's Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie are never going to disappoint on screen. Never. They just don't do it. Some material may let them down, but individually they're not going to do it. And like I said, high concept, you have to buy into that notion. But it can be emotional at some points. It can be funny at some point. And, just seeing Colin Farrell do musical theater is worth the price of a ticket alone.
Has there ever been an actor that's he always had this, this image about him that he was like
a pretty boy?
The pretty boy, bad boy that kind of skated by. But this guy does, and I know we've talked about it before a little bit with him, this guy acts. Like, this guy can bring it, whether he's on TV or in a movie. Like,
he's a freaking penguin.
Yeah, he's superiorly underrated because of that. He's a chameleon type actor that could be a lead in a rom-com or be the lead in your movie because of his charm, his looks, his talent. This is a guy that I just feel like sort of always had this. Yeah, but he just kind of like skates by and doesn't really care. He just kind of picks and chooses bad movies. But this guy, he more often than not, he tends to pick the right people to work with. And he's always sort of had that charm on screen, but he also brings it in his ability to act. So I just feel like, sometimes we kind of take it for granted. Like, this guy's career has been some ups and downs, but for the most part, when it comes to acting, like, I don't think he gets the credit he deserves.
Probably not, but who's the best modern comparison to this guy? I would say Austin Butler.
Okay. Yeah. He
was Austin Butler 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah. He can do the easy roles, but he doesn't really do that. He takes chances. He works with talent, and I think that you're right. Austin Butler's a really good modern comparison. It's weird to say that Farrell's not in the modern acting, but in the last 10, 15 years of young up and coming actors. But yeah, you're right. And Margot Robbie, of course, is another one of those talents as well, who has a commanding screen presence, but I also think that she can act as well. And I think a lot of people, maybe had a weird taste in their mouth after Barbie. She didn't get a nomination. It was kind of a surprise. It was a movie about Barbie, and she was, prototypical Barbie and didn't get the nomination for Best Actress. But Margot Robbie's another one of those actresses that can bring it on screen. And, it's kind of an interesting pairing, and, it's not always going to work. And I know it got the mid-September release, but it probably was because it didn't follow those normal conventions that you see, right?
And that's why I call it a palate cleanser, because everything, as much as I enjoyed most of the summer movies, they were, I don't want to say cliche, but they were formula films.
Yeah.
Formulaic. That's it.
Right. Yeah. And it's good to have something different. It really is. And it's like, I think last year's movie that I think everybody kind of is on the, another one of those divisive movies was like Megalopolis, Coppola's passion project that was a complete and utter mess, but it was complete and utterly entertaining at times too. And I think that I ended up giving it a recommendation because, look, it was something different and unique that I had not seen. And it was like, I kind of felt like I had to put my money where my mouth is, where I say, well, I want to see something I've never seen before when I go to the theater. I don't want to see, the 25th Marvel entry or the 25th Star Wars entry, even though I can enjoy those movies and I love those franchises. I feel like as a society, we've kind of dumbed ourselves down into going to the theater and checking something out that we've never seen before because we're scared we may not like it, or we're scared maybe that we won't understand it. But I'm here to tell you, you got to go for it. Take a chance, and you never know. It'll expand your horizons as well.
Exactly. And I used to be that person who wouldn't do that. And after starting to having, go to films for a living, it's like, God, I missed out on so much when I was younger.
Yeah.
Not that I was that old when I started 30 years ago.
But you learn, you acquire a taste. Movies that you saw when you were 20 years old don't hit the same way that when you're 30, 40, 50 years old. And that's sort of the beauty of cinema, is that art, it's like an ever-changing evolution of art. Like, you can interpret paintings and, sculptures in different ways, from time to time, but movies, can really hit you differently. That's why sometimes when people ask you, like, what are your favorite movies of all time, it could change from day to day, because sometimes you're just in a mode, and then sometimes you think about something in a different mood, and then you've changed your tenor about something, and all of a sudden you're like, that movie needs to be celebrated. So, whether they're meeting expectations or not, it's good that there's originality here in the middle of September, when it's usually a month that's not such a great month for movies.
A lot of people are going to say even with these releases.
Well, that's true. But did you have a final grade for A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey?
I gave it a B.
Okay. Nice little palate cleanser. And another one of those, I guess we would categorize this in the modest Oscar contenders. Swiped will be premiering on Hulu tomorrow. Lily James was kind of the standout for me thinking about this movie. She's kind of been in a lot of things that you've seen, but you may not really know her all that well. You may remember her from Baby Driver as the waitress, who I thought was really good. She was Cinderella for maybe the more mainstream fan base, but she's kind of carved out a nice career here in her 15 years that she's been making things.
I looked at her filmography and I was shocked.
Yeah,
because it's expansive. Being completely honest, she was the best thing about a mediocre film that had the audacity to premiere in Toronto.
Did it really? Okay. Well, maybe they thought they had something better than they did, I guess, right?
I guess, but if you're, it tells the story of the woman who co-founded Tinder, but was basically forced out, and she went on to become become the founder of Bumble,
Mhm.
a dating app that caters to women and their needs. And my guess is the experiences at Tinder contribute a lot to that. But if you're going to make a film about a tech mogul and how they got to where they are, there's only one film that
Right.
you should emulate, not copy, but you should crib notes from, and that's the social or the
Yeah.
social. And there was such depth of character, depth in the story, in the Social Network that a film like Swipe seems shallow by comparison.
Yeah.
And I realize it was an unauthorized tale, blah blah blah, but you never really get in any insight into who. Woman's name is Herb. Her last name is Hurd. I forget her full name. You never get a full picture of who she is. Whitney Wolfe Herd.
Okay.
And you can empathize with and sympathize with what she dealt with, because they do get the sexual harassment on the screen. But that was the most interesting aspect of the story to me, and there wasn't enough there. And I realized apparently she's still under an NDA, so she couldn't help.
Okay.
But that's what investigators are for. You know what I mean?
Right. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It just doesn't sound like there's enough for this. And maybe that's why it's sort of this middle of September direct to streaming, like, hey, we got a good performance out of our lead, and it's going to cater to that. But to me, it just seems like it's either better as a documentary or maybe like a very limited 4-episode series, like just kind of a maybe where you can expand the story a little bit, maybe make it a little grander. But from a film perspective, it kind of seems like you're scraping a shallow barrel here in a biopic situation.
And that's exactly it. It would have been better if they would have had more material that focused on what she dealt with at Tinder, and had the film, not padded, but explore that more in depth, and end with her founding of Bumble, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's just too much of nothing.
Yeah.
My best way to describe it.
A final grade for Swiped?
I believe I gave it a C-.
Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about before we got going and maybe previewed next week, obviously I'm sure you've seen the potential for Paramount to bid on Warner Brothers. This kind of came out of left field for me, and maybe I just wasn't following the trends very well with this, but does this seem like a weird out of left field thing to you, or do you feel like this was sort of the natural progression after the Warner Brothers Discovery split?
You know what? I didn't have Paramount on my bingo card, but you know what? They've got new owners with more money.
And they bought Skydance, so that was a big purchase for them too. So maybe they're just on the. I mean, could you imagine that Warner Brothers library for sale? Like, everybody's going to have to be interested in this, right?
They want to keep it. So yeah, there'll be plenty of people watching it, but I hope it doesn't come close to going through.
Yeah.
The last thing needed is more media consolidation with respect to actually anything. And in that respect, you have to look beyond the studio. You're looking at them being able to acquire CNN.
Yeah.
And if you pay attention to what they have planned for CBS, yeah, that's scary. No.
Right.
No.
Does it seem like Warner Brothers is trying to manifest this though? Because they've had a good year, so much so that I think they took Mortal Kombat 2 off the books and pushed it back because they were already in the black this year. And they've had a really good year with Sinners, a Minecraft movie, Weapons, Superman, and so on. Even the Bloodlines, Final Destination sequel, they were all profitable. They all seem to be doing very well for the company. The company really seemed to have a very good 2025, maybe with the exception of Mickey 17 not really profiting. But I mean, the other movies easily cover those losses. So is this like maybe Warner Brothers trying to strike while the iron's hot, or what do you make of it from their perspective?
I don't know what goes through David Zaslav. Really,
Yes.
First it's HBO, then it's Max, now it's HBO Max again.
Right.
First, we're not going to make as many movies, but no, we're all in on the theatrical game. But
Yeah.
pick a path.
Right. Yeah.
Nurture it.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to say we're going to be theatrical after having some successful theatrical releases. Obviously, I mean, I'm all for it. I know you're all for that strategy as well. But, you know, if they put that library up for sale, you've got to think that Amazon and Apple, Netflix would be just hovering like wolves over a dead carcass, knowing that they could really blow their library out of the water of everybody else in the country, because they're going to have a decades old history of library if they could purchase it. And then of course the name branding as well with Warner Brothers. But yeah, I think I'm in the same boat with you, just hoping that maybe it doesn't come to fruition. What are you watching? Are you streaming anything right now? I know we've talked theatrical mostly, but have you streamed any new TV?
Oh, let's see. What did I write? I write it. I forget about it. Hold on. This week I watched yeah, excuse the pregnant pause. Wow. When did I close that? Now this week I watched Slow Horses is back.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And The Lowdown with Ethan Hawke.
Yeah.
I'll have a column coming up on those two next week. Those are the two big ones. There's a Marvel zombie series coming up that I'm going to take a peek at tomorrow, I believe.
Okay. Did you have any thoughts on the Emmys? They were just handed out last week.
Seth Rogen, man. You know what that did? You know what that did for me? My wife and I started watching Platonic.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard good things about that Apple TV Plus series.
And we stopped. We couldn't get into it. So I went back and I finished it. Finished season 1.
Okay.
And I decided it's a very underrated series.
Okay.
Typical Seth Rogen, although he didn't create it.
Right.
But it's like the character was written for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays a 40-something-year-old man baby. That's what it boils down to.
Well, he's had a pretty good run, with the studio, of course, and obviously he's had a lot of success in the film industry. But he seemed to have found his niche a little bit here with, Apple TV Plus kind of giving him all the money to do what he wants to do, and being a part of that branding for them probably helps, having Seth Rogen on their brand, and vice versa. He gets the money that he needs to make the stuff he wants to make or be a part of something he wants to make, and it's kind of a nice partnership so far.
Yeah, and I can't help but think it's going to be one that lasts for a while, given the track record so far.
He's kind of become the Apple TV Plus Danny McBride that HBO has used with McBride in that partnership over the years. So it's good to see, and I've always heard good things about Platonic, so might get that on the list as well, and delve back into some more Apple TV Plus now that I'm kind of looking for things there. But I know next week, it's a big week for the film industry because the early buzz is amazing for One Battle After Another. I'm assuming that's going to be on your list next week, is it?
Yeah, but I won't have it for this next week because they're not screening it locally.
Oh, Warner Brothers, yeah.
Because it's not summer. Go figure. They're not looking for box office, and that's a pity because Paul Thomas Anderson, has Cleveland ties.
Yeah,
and it's disappointing that they're not going to screen it locally. But okay. I'll catch up to it probably Thursday night. And maybe I'll write something then. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the curse of the Warner Brothers distribution plug. I don't understand why they've unplugged so many outlets there. It's really disappointing. But I mean, obviously myself and some groups of friends will be going to the movie next week, so we can discuss as well. I'm excited about it. I know I was kind of very hesitant early in the year as it had the September release, and also the quirky trailer. It kind of seemed more like an Inherent Vice as opposed to like a There Will Be Blood or something a little bit more Oscar baity kind of down the middle. But I'm very excited about it. It's gotten a great response. And it seems like for all intent and purposes, it's going to be one Oscar after another. I've seen that on Twitter. So it's going to be very interesting to see if that movie kind of surpasses Sinners, which is kind of in the lead right now. It's been in the pole position since it released in March, but now we're really starting to get into these prestige films, and One Battle After Another from the same studio has an opportunity here to maybe stake its claim to Oscar glory.
Aren't those two trailers for this movie extremely schizophrenic, for lack of a better term?
That's why I was
teaser, and then we get the second one. It's like, what?
That's why I was I wasn't indifferent about it, but I was so conflicted because it's PTA, which you really can't
you can't disregard.
You can't disregard a PTA film. But then I thought, man, this looks more like a weird, quirky, more serious Wes Anderson almost. Like it's a weird kind of vibe to it when the teasers came out. Like it almost seemed like more Inherent Vice, like I said. It was like more of like a bumbling protagonist instead of like the anti-hero with Daniel Plainview and There Will Be Blood, or something much more serious like Magnolia, which is just a 3-hour acting drama. But I mean, I'm all in. And I think even Steven Spielberg had mentioned like this is like an action movie, which you don't really expect from PTA as well. So I'm very excited to see it. And, it's one of those movies where I always had it on my calendar, but I was always a little skeptical. And I think I've finally, those issues have been quelled because the response out of premieres and, smaller festival circuits have just been so glowing about the movie.
Oh, you're keyed in, but I got to wonder if Joe Public or Jill Public, whatever you want to call the public, looks at both those trailers and they're like, what? Which is
right.
I don't think they did themselves any favors. That's the best way to put
it. I totally agree with you. This movie, it's so weird because I feel like it's not going to make any money, but I wouldn't be shocked if it unexpectedly does well. Now, will it make a profit? I don't think so. On like $175 million projected budget, I don't see that happening. But I don't think the mass audience really knows or cares that much that you would say this is a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Like most people might not know who that is, to be honest with you. And it's sad that they don't, but obviously cinephiles do, and they'll probably flock to the theater. But if DiCaprio can sell it, maybe, but I don't know. I mean, even DiCaprio's had some box office blunders as well, even though he's made plenty of R-rated movies into box office successes as well. But I just wonder. I do wonder if the audience, like you said, watching this trailer gets it or is interested in it, because I don't know that it's. And maybe that's why they gave him the September release, because maybe Warner Brothers, much like with Mickey 17, just didn't know what they had, didn't know what to do with it. And maybe that's part of the process. Is they don't know how to sell this because they're not selling some cookie cutter action superhero movie or whatever, and I think that's part of their problem right now is, we as audience need to kind of get out of the doldrums of just being hit over the head with sequel after sequel or intellectual property after intellectual property. But I also think studios need to do that, where they challenge themselves to say, how would we sell this movie 15, 20, 30 years ago, as opposed to how do we sell this in an era where we have Superman, the Fantastic Four, the 25th entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe after Avengers Endgame. You know what I mean? I think that's part of the problem is studios are struggling because they're not used to doing this.
I'd argue that Warner Brothers is the Continental Studios of.
They should. There's no excuse. I'm not excusing them for any. I don't excuse anything that Warner Brothers does or doesn't do. I feel like they've lucked out into a good year because Sinners was so well received and so good and had all that word of mouth. A Minecraft movie was an intellectual property that they were able to capitalize on. Good for them. Superman was a very solid movie, and I think it deserved the flowers, and I think it deserved even better box office than what it had, but it did well. Weapons, if you're into the horror genre, has done very well for them as well. So, I think that instead of movies selling themselves, I think Warner Brothers needs to kind of get that kick in the pants, maybe to
sell
it, instead of letting a genre sell it, like actually sell the movies, because I think that most people, unless you read the taglines on this movie or any kind of like synopsis or description of the plot, you have no idea what's going on in this other than Leo DiCaprio looks like a burned out stoner. You know what I mean?
True. That's very true.
Yeah. Well, we will discuss, not next week, unfortunately, but maybe when we do get back at it, we will be able to discuss both sides of it because I'll have seen it as well. So as always, you can read George at George Thomas in the Beacon Journal at beaconjournal.com. You can read all of his reviews. You can watch his video reviews. And of course, you can continue following us here on the podcast and getting all of his great insight into movies and streaming and all things pop culture. George, great to see you. I know you'll be at the theaters next week, like most will, hopefully for one battle after another. At least I will be there, but we hope you have a good time at the movies.
Oh, I'll be there either Thursday afternoon or Thursday night because, I'm off Friday. So what the heck?
All right. Well, you take care of yourself and we will discuss not next week, but the week after.
All righty.